Hello everyone, this is the 7th Inning Stretch podcast for Monday, the 18th of April. We are through 10 games of the Blue Jays 2022 season, and they sit at 6-4. I'm Matt Antonio. You can find me on Twitter at MattOnJays. You can subscribe to the 7th Inning Stretch podcast on Apple Podcasts, on Google Podcasts, and where you find most podcasts, or you can find the video version on YouTube. So let's just take stock of where the Jays are after 10 games, with Monday being an off day and beginning a stretch of 21, I believe it's 21 days in a row with a game and a pretty tough stretch upcoming with 10 straight against the Boston Red Sox and the Houston Astros starting on Tuesday in Boston for 3 games. So what do we have so far after 10 games? Well, the offense looked really good in the first weekend against Texas and then cooled a little bit in New York, splitting 2 games, and in both losses they were shut out. And then over the weekend, taking 2 out of 3 from Oakland. The offense not quite where we expected it to be just yet. It looked like it was going to be where we wanted it to be during that Texas series. They had scored 20 runs in their first 18 innings. But then things have kind of cooled off since then, and they're kind of around the middle of the pack. And this reminds me a little bit more of 2016, where we went into the season, high expectations for a high-powered offense with question marks around the pitching staff, probably more question marks around that pitching staff than we had in this season. But the offense got off to a pretty slow start that year as well. A number of factors, maybe it's the shortened spring training. Hitters haven't quite gotten as many plate appearances they would have liked. Looks like the team is really amped up to be playing in front of those big crowds, and maybe the excitement of 35 to 40,000 home fans in those first 6 games have been making them press a little bit. Vlad Guerrero Jr. certainly looks like he's chasing a little bit more than we've really ever seen him chase, certainly going back to his rookie season. And on that note, one of the things that he was always so good at is being able to take a walk. But so far, through 10 games this year, Vlad has walked just twice and struck out 11 times. Bo Bichette has not walked at all yet and has also struck out 11 times. What else sticks out? Obviously, the runners with scoring, the batting average with runners in scoring position, they are hitting 160, which is 28th in the league. That's certainly not going to get it done. 25th in walks. Last year they were 20th, so not much difference from last season. But the strikeouts. Last year they ranked dead last in strikeouts, which is a good thing. They struck out the fewest number of times of any team in the league last year. This year, through 10 games, they have struck out the 11th most across the league. So their strikeouts are up. Average with runners in scoring position is down, and that's going to lead to things not quite clicking, and Teoscar Hernandez certainly feels missed, and Danny Jansen was off to a great start, but Lourdes Gurriel Jr. stepping into that cleanup spot for Teoscar Hernandez. If you remember on my Bold Predictions podcast last week or 10 days ago or so, I said that Lourdes would have a better offensive season than Teoscar Hernandez. Now, Teoscar got off to a very good start at the big 3-run home run on opening day. And Lourdes got off to a bit of a slow start, but he's, I believe the number was 7 for 13 since taking over the cleanup spot since Hernandez was injured on Wednesday night in New York. So Lourdes has certainly stepped up in the absence. We need a little bit more from Vlad. He leads the league in home runs, had that big 3 home run night on Wednesday in New York, and that was great. Has hit another home run since then, but just 2 hits since that 3 home run game, including a 4 strikeout game on Thursday that's contributed to that terrible 11-2 strikeout to walk ratio that we've seen. I still think things are going to settle for this team. There's just too much talent on this team for them to not really turn it around offensively. And it just takes a couple of pieces, a couple of good at-bats. Bo Bichette did have 2 singles on Sunday. Sort of dribblers up the middle, but sometimes you just need to see those hits get through to sort of get your confidence going. And I think everything will be okay. And a trip to Fenway Park with that big wall in left field, a lot of home run potential for them, might just be what they need to get the offense going. So overall, not too worried about what we are going to see offensively based on what we have seen over the first 10 games. Second big point I want to talk about is it feels through 10 games like Alek Manoah is the undoubted ace of this staff. Every time he takes the ball, you just feel confident that the Blue Jays are going to be able to go out and win. He made his 22nd career start on Sunday against Oakland and picked up his 11th win, which ties him for the most wins in franchise history through his first 22 starts. His fastball's working, his changeup's working, his sliders, his changeup, which he barely threw last year, has looked like a real weapon for him so far this year. He's just got a confidence on the mound, a poise, a presence, a big presence. Remember, this is a guy who was taken 11th overall in the draft not too long ago, so he's not sort of a surprise prospect out of nowhere. This is a guy who was supposed to be very good. He's been very good, maybe a little bit earlier than we were anticipating, but he has been excellent, and he is a top prospect and was a top 11 pick for a reason. And he's really sort of stabilized the Blue Jays rotation after a very rocky first time through the rotation, where they had a very high ERA. Of course, Jose Barrios only getting one out on opening day. Kevin Gausman only went 5 innings, then went 5 2/3. He looked great his second start Thursday night in New York, and I think he's going to be great. Barrios certainly calmed things down and went 5 strong innings against a very tough Yankees lineup. Now, they don't get much of a break because they go from facing the Yankees lineup last week to now they'll face the Red Sox lineup on the road this week. But that's life in the American League East, and that's why these guys both make over $100 million on their long-term contracts. They are being paid to win games against these high-powered offensive teams. But getting back to Manoah, he's young, and he just feels like every time you give him the ball, he is going to give you 6 to 7 solid innings with very little hard contact. The strikeouts are there. You'd like to maybe see him take down the walks and the hit batters a little bit. But, the talk around the fan base, certainly on Twitter, is that this guy is ready to be the best pitcher on this staff, which would be huge news if he can deliver on that in just 22 starts so far. Still a young kid and has not pitched a full season in the major leagues. If he can pitch like an ace, Barrios and Gausman are fantastic 2 and 3 options. And it just really showcases the depth of this starting rotation. Speaking of depth in the starting rotation, it is being tested because kind of the biggest storyline around the team over the last 48 hours or so is the health of Hyun-Jin Ryu, making just his second start of the season on Saturday, and he was hit around again, gave up 5 runs in the second inning after looking very sharp in the first inning, but his velocity was down once again. Pitches just right out over the heart of the plate, giving up a lot of hard contact. And as a result, only went 4 innings after failing to complete 4 innings in his first start last weekend against Texas. And now we find out that he has some forearm tightness, has been placed on the injured list. And at least the sort of silver lining is that, there is an actual physical ailment, because during that game, everyone on Twitter, what's wrong with Ryu? Is he just done? This guy who's still got 2 years at $20 million a season left on his contract, including this year. And if he's just done, what do you do? That's a pretty big waste of $40 million, essentially. But at least it appears that there is a sort of physical issue behind this, and you hope that they can get that healed up with that stint on the injured list, and then allow him to, maybe make some rehab appearances or some time down in Florida with the training staff to get himself improved, and he can come back and have the type of impact on the season that we were hoping he could have. But if you go back to the middle of last year, it's a 20-game stretch where his ERA is over 5. Which is not at all what you want for a guy who, he's probably the 4th starter on this team, him and Kikuchi 4 or 5. But again, this is a guy who's making $20 million a year, and the type of pitcher that he is not really a guy that you are able to send to the bullpen in an extended role. He just doesn't have that kind of stuff that you really see play up out of the bullpen. This is a guy who needs to be a starter. Sending him down to the minors, probably not an option either with the kind of money he's making. It almost is like you've got to have him figure it out at the major league level. And there was a great tweet from Ben Wagner yesterday as well. What's also really stark is his ERA in his starts at the Rogers Center since going back to last year is ballooned compared to his starts everywhere else. His starts outside of Toronto, his ERA is, I believe, was 3.2, but in Toronto it's over 6 or over 7, which is absolutely not what you want to see for a guy who's likely going to be making about half his starts in Toronto. So hopefully the injury is what you can pinpoint as the issue, and once he is fully healthy, he'll be able to get back to being as effective as he can be. It seems very likely that the days of him being a finalist for the Cy Young, like he was even in 2020 in his first year with Toronto, even though he didn't play in Toronto, those days are gone. But if he can be an effective third starter with an ERA around 4, that's not the greatest return on investment for $20 million, but maybe we should stop harping on that number so much. It was a 4-year deal that was signed 2 years ago. That was the kind of money you needed to pay to get him to Toronto, and that signing was really sort of a turning page in the franchise of being able to attract free agents and tell other free agents and other players that they were opening their window of competitiveness. So maybe that contract is more symbolic than anything else, and the ownership has proven that they are not afraid to sort of spend money to make a problem go away with this roster that has championship aspirations. So we certainly hope that Hyunjin Ryu can return healthy soon and get back to good form that will see him be a valuable member of this Blue Jays rotation. Now, on that note, the signing of Yusei Kikuchi with this injury looks even more savvy now than it did at the time. There's another guy, 3-year deal, $36 million, $16 million this year. Slotting in as the 5th starter, now 4th starter or 5th starter, with Ross Stripling sliding into the rotation. But without Kikuchi, remember the plan or the hope was that Stripling and Nate Pearson would battle it out for the 5th starter spot. Well, Nate Pearson got mono during spring training. He's still probably a month away. So without the Kikuchi signing and then the Ryu injury, now all of a sudden Stripling is definitely your number 4 starter, and your number 5 starter is Thomas Hatch or Anthony Kay or Nick Allgaier or Casey Lawrence or Bowden Francis. Not names that you really want to be your 5th starter this early in the season. Those are kind of guys, middle of the year, maybe you need a spot start here and there, you can bring them up, but those are not the guys that you want taking the ball every 5th day this early in the season. And speaking of which, the plan was to go to a 6-man rotation with Hyunjin Ryu, liking some extra rest, and with it being early in the year, it looked like they were going to put Stripling in the rotation, a 6-man rotation. He got his first start of the year on Friday. It will be interesting to see whether they stick with that 6-man rotation moving forward, or if it's just the 5-man now with him taking Ryu's place. Again, they're starting a stretch of 20 games in 20 days, or either 20 and 20 or 21 and 21, and they will need all the starting pitching depth that they can get during this time. So just a few more quick-hitting notes before we sign off for the day. Boy, was I wrong about Jordan Romano. I predicted him to no longer be the closer at the end of the year in favor of Nate Pearson, but all he's done is go 6 for 6 so far, setting a franchise record with most consecutive converted saves. And the back of that bullpen looks like it could be a division winner with Meza and Garcia and Simber and Richards, and even David Phelps providing some good innings there as well. Alejandro Kirk getting an extended run. Is he being exposed with too much playing time? We always kind of thought last year, the year before, that maybe his best value to the team was as a trade chip, and now we're seeing him play every day, and other teams are seeing him play every day, and maybe some of his flaws are being exposed a little bit. He's just 5 for 26 on the season with no extra base hits. Defensively, game calling wise, looks like he's made some improvements, but does look like he is not quite a finished product. Still very young, but maybe not quite ready to be the everyday guy behind the plate. And that trade of Reese McGuire looked really bad, but then Zach Collins had a great weekend, and maybe that takes a little bit of the pressure off of the calls to promote Gabriel Moreno from Buffalo, although he is off to a great start as well. A couple more notes. Tip of the cap to Trent Thornton. I certainly have been critical of him in the past couple of years, and even during his outing on opening day, but his last 2 appearances have both been 2 innings of scoreless relief, and on Saturday he really kept them in the game, and seems like he's settling into that multi-inning reliever role that he had last year, but still sort of struggled with that. Blue Jays 97 win pace right now. That's what 6 out of 10 will get you. Although if you take away the first 2 wins of the season, they went 2-0. They have been 500 since then, alternating losses and wins after those first 2 wins. But 6 out of 10, 600 baseball. That gets you a 97 win pace, and it does feel like a winning streak is on the way at some point. And the good news is they have not lost back-to-back games yet this year. They have followed up every loss with another win. And it will be interesting to see. Next week is the first visit for the Boston Red Sox, scheduled Monday through Thursday, and already rumors swirling that the Red Sox will be without several players because they are not vaccinated. The Blue Jays play the Red Sox in Boston starting tomorrow, and it sounds, or starting Tuesday, I should say, and it sounds like they're having some COVID issues right now. Maybe not all that surprising that the team with one of the lowest vaccination rates in the league is having a bit of a COVID issue right now. And seems like they're going to be willing to come north without their best roster because some of their better players don't want to get vaccinated. So that's what has been going on over the last 10 days. I'll look ahead. As mentioned, the next 13 games are against Boston and Houston. That is followed up by 3 against the Yankees. So a very busy stretch for the Blue Jays. And this is going to, as we have known all along, this is going to tell us and them a lot about how good they really are, how good they can be. And if you just sort of stay in the race during these next couple of weeks, I think then the schedule softens a bit and things will get better from there. All right, that's all we have time for today. Again, I'm Matt Antonio. You can find me on Twitter at MattOnJays. Don't forget to head on over to jaysbach.com and subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts, audio or video on YouTube as well. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next week.